All right. Welcome to the first of the how-to videos where I'm going to dive into the study section. As I mentioned when in the last video, this is the main dashboard that you're going to see when you first log into GTO Wizard. You can customize this however you like. I haven't really done much customization on GTO Wizard, but if it's something that you're using all the time, or if you're very particular about colors or things like that, you can do a lot of customizing here. But this dashboard is going to have just some shortcuts for you, or you can just use the top navigation bar. Let's just click into the study section. So, and that's what we're going to be spending some time digging into in this particular video. So when I click on the study section, this is the screen that comes up, and this is going to be your main hub for the study section. And in the study section, everything starts with the solution that you'd like to study. So with that, what you're going to do is you're going to go to this little box right here, and the information of the solution that you have selected is going to be showing up right here. So I've already selected a cash 200 big blind 6 max solution with the rake of a no limit 500 game, with just some general bet sizing options for 3 bets and just general bet sizes. But I can change that. And I can change that by clicking on this. And if I click on this, what it's going to do is it's going to take me to my solutions library. I also can go to custom solutions here, and this is where I can dive into things that I've already looked at in the past. But I'm going to just stick with the solutions library for now. Now, this solutions library, what it's going to do is it's going to show you everything that all of the possible solutions that you can load up for GTO Wizard. Because what you have to remember is when you're looking at GTO Wizard is while there is functionality to be able to solve customized spots, and we'll get into that in a little bit. A lot of GTO Wizard and a lot of the value of GTO Wizard is derived from pre-solved scenarios. So GTO Wizard has a massive library of pre-solved solutions. Some of those are pre-flop only solutions, and some of those are solutions that they have post-flop spots solved for as well too. So, but everything starts when you have a solution that's loaded up. So based on the options that you've selected in here, and we'll go through those options in a second, the solutions that you can choose are listed in this table over here on the right hand side. So you can see the stack depth, the type of the solution, which we'll get into that in a second. You can see the rake that's set up, the opening sizes, the 3-bet sizes, and so on and so forth. And this table's nice because it shows you how many solutions that are actually fit the criteria of what you've selected. So I don't have any filters that are set up, actually. I mean, other than just that it's 6 max and cash. With that said, there are 58 possible solutions that also include post-flop. If I switch that around, you can start seeing things, right? So if I look for pre-flop only solutions, now there's 1,355 possible situations here too. So there's a lot of stuff within or this tool itself. Let's just dive into the different options here. So I am using, for the purposes of this particular module, I am using the cache setup. There are solutions for MTT, spin and goes, and heads up sit and goes as well too. If you do not have a subscription to them, so you need separate subscriptions for all of those. I don't have a subscription for them right at the moment. I may do one extra video where I append this and I do an MTT one, because there are some cool ranges here to utilize when you actually dig into like ICM and things like that. But if I try to click on one of these like MTT, what's going to happen is you'll see on the header up here in the top right, I have an option to upgrade because I don't have a subscription for MTT. But so So let's just go back to cache because we can use cache as an example here. There's also lots of configurations here. So I can use the classic or anti plus straddle formats. I have solutions for heads up, 6 max or 9 max. As I mentioned here, there's solutions where there's post flop included or pre-flop only. This is important to know here, just to hover over this one real fast, is that the value of GTO Wizard, a lot of the value is on the post-flop solutions. So while pre-flop only, I have a lot of these possible solutions in here. There's 1,355 of them. This is going to be really great for getting equilibrium pre-flop ranges. You're not going to be able to get post-flop stuff for this. So if you are looking at, if you're trying to dive into post-flop reports and things like that, you're going to want to stick with post-flop included. And then you can drill down even further here to say, maybe you only want 200 big blind stack sizes, right? So if I just click 200 big blind stack sizes, and I want post flop included as well, well, now I only have 4 possible solutions that I can work with here. I have the NL500 rake structure and the NL50 rake structure, where my bet sizes are either general, which is lots of bet sizes, or simple, which if I hover over this and show you, it has fewer bet sizes. It's a little bit less complex, and this is a little bit better if you're actually trying to study and you want to try to build out strategies. The general one, which gives you a larger amount of bet sizes, it makes it hard to kind of drill down exact strategies sometimes. Very, very good for both have their place, I'll say. So, but again, this is a way in which you can actually drill down even further here. Depending on the filters that you select here, again, this will kind of simplify down. So if let's say I want 200 big blinds, I only want simple, and I want NL500 rake. Well, there's only one solution for that. So this is a way in which you can actually dig into the solutions and select the solution that you actually want to study. So with that said, let's look at this particular solution here. This is the 200 big blind simple bet sizing options, NL500 rake, and we're going to look at GTO open sizes and GTO 3-bet sizes, mainly because these are our only options. We don't even have any other options to look at different opening sizes here. I'm not going to look at pre-flop solutions. Just know that the pre-flop solutions, the post-flop solutions, or the solutions that have post-flop included, has everything that the pre-flop only solutions has. It just gives you the availability to look at post-flop things as well. So we're going to skip over looking at just pre-flop. Pre-flop, looking at pre-flop's great, especially, for myself, I'm a live cash player. So, if you wanted to look at the pre-flop solutions, you can certainly do that here. So I'll go to pre-flop only, and we can, if I'm looking at this from a live perspective, and I would change this to 9 max, then I would actually, have my rake structure. I can maybe use this to study and build out some pre-flop ranges. Again, it's a good place to start from. Not necessarily something that you're going to be able to move past pre-flop with. You're going to have to go to one of these post-flop included scenarios. So to do that, you can easily kind of get around that a little bit here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the 6 max solutions where post-flop is included. I'll use the NL500 rake, and I'm going to take simplified bet sizes. So I have my structure here. It is deep stack. So that is the nice thing, is that GTO Wizard has added more solutions over time. So it's not just limited to the online game where there's 100 big blind stacks. This is a pretty decent proxy for live play, since the stack sizes are larger here. What you're just going to have to do is note that this is only 6 max. So if you're trying to extend this to a 9 max live game, just know that for the first 3 positions, under the gun, +1 and +2, you're just going to tighten up a little bit more than you would in the under the gun in this 6 max game, which would be equivalent to the low jack in a live game. So let's click on this, and that's going to load up this solution. And as I can see, this is the solution that is loaded. So when I dive into here, everything is going to start with this navigation bar. And really that is where really kind of, where we are going to work within is using this navigation bar. The navigation bar is great because it can help us pick the spot that we actually want to study. Now, you're going to see that one thing here is highlighted. That's shown below. That's the range that represents here. So what you see here in this grid is the opening range, or the equilibrium opening range, I should say, for the under the gun player in a 6-max 200 big blind game. I can, click on any of these. So let's say I just click straight to the cutoff. Now that's the opening range for the cutoff. What you'll see here is this is actually one of the things of GTO Wizard. If I wanted to, I could start here and I could say fold, and then I could click fold again, and then that will just bring me to the cutoff. Or I can just click the cutoff directly, and what GTO Wizard is going to do is automatically it's going to fold all of the action up until that point. So this is a quick way to go from place to place. And whatever scenario that I want to pick, let's say I want to study a cutoff open versus a big blind call. What I would do is I would select then this raise 2.5 for the cutoff. And again, I could just pick fold for the button and fold for the small blind, or I could just go pick this next action, which is the big blind call, and it's going to fold these two automatically. Now, what you'll see here is something popped up, right? And this is the flop that popped up here. And what this flop does is GTO Wizard is smart enough to know that once we've reached this point where as the cutoff raised and then as the big blind called, there's no more actions pre-flop. And now we need a flop if we want to keep going forward. So now I am forced to enter a board to actually go to look at the post-flop gameplay. But, again, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Really, all that you need to know with GTO Wizard is everything here starts with this navigation bar. And the navigation bar is going to be what you utilize to actually, pick the scenario that you want to pick. Now, I'm going to just call out a couple things on this bar here. There's a couple areas that you can, shortcuts that I would actually recommend. First is this reset history. Now, the reset history, what that's going to do is if I just click it, it's going to take me back to the beginning of this particular solution. So let's say you're far down digging into a particular board or a situation or whatever the case may be. You click reset history, it's going to take you back to the beginning. Really great to kind of, if you want to stay with the same solution, stay with the same formation, but you want to start over again and you want to maybe study a different spot. You also have this shortcut option. So if I click the shortcut option, it's going to take this table. So rather than use the navigation bar, let's say, again, I want to study cutoff versus big blind, single raise pot, and I hit confirm. GTO Wizard's going to automatically create that spot. Cutoff open, big blind call. I can pick whatever flop that I want to study, and we are back where we started from. I can save different spots if I want to maybe look at the same spot over and over again or whatever the case may be. I can save spots and go back to that later. And then I can practice this spot. So in a future video, you're going to see me diving into the practice section. If I'm diving, this is really, really helpful, actually. If you're diving into something and you are spending a lot of time studying a scenario and then you want to practice it, well, GTO Wizard is great because you can actually just go right from studying to practicing that particular spot. So that's really it on the navigation bar and how you might utilize the navigation bar. Let's dive into the section below. So this section below, what this is going to show you is this is going to be the area where you're going to be studying. And it's broken up into 4 main tabs here. There's the strategy tab, the ranges tab, the breakdown tab, and the reports tab. The strategy tab is the 13 by 13 grid that we all know and love. What it's going to show you is for the position that's highlighted, it's going to show you the strategy breakdown about the range at that particular point in time. So what I have here hovered over you right now is this is the big blinds option after the cutoff open and big blind defense. You're going to see there are some hands that are highlighted and some hands that are highlighted here, in this case in green, and then there are some hands that are just black. What this represents is that the hands that are at black, they're not in the range. And, for obvious reasons. For the big blind, in this case here, some of these really, really good hands, like aces, kings, queens, and, the hands at this top left part of the grid, they're not in the range because the big blind 3-bets them pre-flop. Some of the weak hands, like, Jack 3 offsuit, 10-3 offsuit, they're not in range because the big blind folds them pre-flop. The green hands are the hands that are in that range. And in this case here, the options are color coded. So what this defaults to as is it's showing the strategy, which is what at equilibrium is the strategic action that is taken by the big blind. And in this case here, and we can see here on the bottom right side that 100% of the range on this particular board in this formation is checking to the cutoff opener. So we only see one color as green. But if I just click check here and go to the cutoffs option, now we can see the cutoff. The cutoff has, there's a little bit more diversity in the strategic options here. We can see that there is some dark red, there's some, lighter red, even lighter red, and green. And that's going to represent the options that are shown here on the bottom right side of the screen. So in this particular solve scenario the solution that GTO Wizard has set up, the cutoff has the option to either check, bet 1.8, bet 3.65 big blinds, bet 7.15 big blinds, or go all in for the full 200 big blinds or the 197.5 big blinds that are remaining. In that case there, these colors are showing at a macro level here on the right-hand side of the screen what GTO Wizard, what the output of this solution looks like. And then for each individual hand, you can see the what each individual hand, how it's being broken out for the various bet size options. On this strategy tab, there's a few different things. I can click this button here and it'll show drop down. So I can look at the strategy plus EV, which will overlay the EV for each particular hand. I can look at the strategy plus equity, which will overlay the equity for each of the hands. And again, this is EV and equity at this particular point in the node against our opponent's particular range, right? So this is all specific to this scenario at play. I call that out because, these solutions are based off of equilibrium. And we all know that our opponents are not playing at equilibrium in actual gameplay. So if your opponent has a wildly different range than you would expect at this given point in time, your EVs and equities might actually diverge somewhat differently from these equilibrium ones. But again, this is at equilibrium. You can look at this from an EV perspective, not necessarily breaking down by strategy. So this is color-coded at the EV level. You can look at this by comparing EVs. So this is a good way to compare different options. You can look at this from an equity, an EQR, which is equity realization perspective, or you can look at it from a range perspective, which is really just showing you how much of that particular hand is in that range, right? So in this case here, most of them are ones, meaning that all of aces are in the cutoff's range. But we didn't at equilibrium open all of king 9 offsuit. We only opened 65% of it, right? So this is kind of showing how much of that range is in play. And then all is just going to kind of take you back to kind of the main screen that we have here. I'm just going to go to the strategy section here. So that's the strategy tab. The ranges tab lets you compare and contrast the composition of the two ranges. So this is, I love this tab. This is one of my favorite tabs to look at here. It's going to show the two players. So we have our big blind and our cutoff. It's going to show you the different ranges. It's also going to show you for the ranges comparisons. So we can look at how many combinations are in each range, the EV, equity, EQR. For the individual hands, what's the breakout of the hands, right? So who has the advantage in sets, two pairs, over pairs, and so on and so forth, all the way through the entire range. We have this equity chart below, and if you've seen a lot of my videos, you know that I love these equity distributions, which gives you a really good sense of how the equities of the two ranges compare to one another. And you can see as I'm hovering over them, it highlights in the grids above, so I can actually see the particular components of the ranges, right? So even if I hover over this, like I can see the sets, I can see the two pairs, I can see the over pairs. Really, really, really great for range analysis here. The other thing I like about this tab is there is this copy functionality. So, suppose you are doing work in in GTO Wizard, but you also want to supplement it with something in PioSolver or GTO Plus. I do this all the time, and GTO Wizard does have the functionality so that you can use this AI solve feature and actually build your own game tree and solve it in GTO Wizard itself. Definitely I recommend utilizing that. It's gotten a lot more powerful than even it was a few months ago. And I know that this is from the acquisition of that Ruse AI program earlier this year. But even before, I go back to my experience with GTO Wizard going before that, where it didn't have that AI solve functionality. I would use this all the time. So what you can do is you can copy this. So let's say I want to copy what the bet medium size look like, right? So this bet 3.65 size looks like. I can copy this, and it's been copied to the clipboard. And I'm not going to open up a GTO Wizard right now, or sorry, GTO Plus right now, but I'll just open up a notepad and paste this in here. And this is the range, right? So you can see the range here, deuce of diamonds, deuce of clubs, it's in there at 8.4%. Deuce of hearts, deuce of clubs is in there at 7.6%, and so on and so forth. And you can see the breakout in here. I can quickly paste this into a GTO Plus or a PioSolver and utilize these exact same ranges to do a little bit more custom work in there too. So again, I really love this. But the ranges tab gives you a good way of comparing both of those two particular ranges. There's the breakdown tab, and the breakdown tab is going to have these Manhattan graphs, and a Manhattan graph is a way to kind of scroll over from the lowest equity hands to the highest equity hands, and it's going to take what is hovered, so it's used to break down the actions within your range that are constructed. Really, really, really cool to see how different hand classes actually want to play, and comparing the composition of the different bet sizes in range, right? So, I can look at these hand categories. I can sort them by however I like, right? So let's say I want to sort them by strategy. I can see right away, okay, sets, two pair, and over pair are always betting, which, unsurprising, right? So but I can start seeing the sizes that they want to bet, right? And, it gives me a good sense to see how different hand classes play. I can, break it out by draws, open-ended straight draws, gut shots, backdoor flush draws. It breaks it out by the best hands, weak hands, trash hands, and good hands. And then it breaks it out further by, the hands in the different equity buckets here. Really, really cool. It gives me a sense of the, what portion is that hand class within my overall range, and then how many combos exist within that as well too. And then there's the reports section, and the reports section is, this is an aggregated report. I mean, this is zooming out further, and it's saying, okay, for GTO Wizard, up until that, for these first three tabs, I'm looking at the Queen 9-5 board. What does this cutoff open versus big blind call look like for all boards in this specific formation? So, and that's what this tab represents. This tab represents, every single one of the 1,755 unique flops in GTO Wizard, right? So it doesn't have all of the 22,100 flops. If that were the case, we would see, there's 4 different ways in which we can make ace, ace, ace. But we only need to look at one of those because all 4 of those are strategically the same. So there's 1,755 different flops here. Within this, I can look at the strategies, so I can see what's the breakout at an aggregate level of check versus bet small versus bet medium versus bet large versus all in, and I can see the EVs for the out of position and in position players, the equities for the out of position and in position players, and the equity realization for both of those players as well too. Again, I can sort this however I like, right? So, suppose I want to sort this by, and this is, we'll get into the use cases, but, this is one of the things that I like to do is sort this by starting with check, right? So if I sort this by check and I'll go the other way, I can start taking a look at what are the types of boards where we don't have any checks, right? So, right here I can start seeing of these boards, where these are the types of boards that don't have checks in the cutoff range, right? So, trips boards, you don't have checks in the cutoffs range here. King X boards don't really have checks on the cutoff range, right? So, I can start making some generalizations about this. I can go the other way and start seeing, well, what are we almost checking 100% of our range, right? So, some of these monotone boards, a lot of the monotone boards are checking often. Low connected boards here, 653, 643, 764, 653 two-tone, 643 two-tone. We're checking often on these particular boards here. So, again, as I'm starting to build out strategies for a formation, I can start seeing, what is going on for each of these individual boards at an aggregate level. I can see the full formation here. So this is for all big blind versus cutoff, averaged out what it looks like, and then each individual board. I also have this filter functionality here, and for that I can click over this filters button and I can break things down and look at any particular types of boards. So maybe I only want to look at king high boards. If I click on king, well, now I can see this is all filtered to king high boards. You'll also see this percentage here drop down to 18.3%. That's how many flops are represented in this current filter. So 18.3% of flops are king high. This is useful. It's useful because a lot of strategy development, what I want to do is I want to compare things to the aggregate, right? So when I look at individual boards, I'm looking at those individual boards, but I'm comparing them to the aggregate. So when I look at the aggregate view, it tells me, I have to drill in more. I'm checking a decent amount. I'm betting small a decent amount. There is a part of my strategy where I'm betting medium, and even some boards I'm betting large. But at an aggregate level, it's hard to kind of build a strategy off of this. Whereas, again, I'll kind of get out of my filters. If I look at any of this compared to the aggregate, so let's just go into, I'm going to bring this and sort by bet large. There's a subset of these boards where betting large is a big part of my strategy. So I might keep playing around with this filter functionality and try to identify what are the different types of boards that might want to bet large. What are the types of boards that want to check? What are the types of boards that want to bet small? And build out a more custom strategy that way. You can save your filters, and I have a bunch of filters that are actually saved here. So, let's say I want to look at, Ace Broadway boards, right? So I'll click on this Ace Broadway boards, and if I apply that, you'll see here that that's 8.7% of boards. Actually, the Ace Broadway boards, where there's an ace and a Broadway card here, I'm actually checking more than I am at overall aggregate, but I'm also betting large more than overall aggregate. So that lends me to believe that I'm more likely to develop a more polarized strategy on these ace Broadway X boards within this particular formation, because I'm doing that much more frequently than I am to the overall average on these particular boards. So, again, you can do a lot of, work here. This is where I like to spend a lot of time digging into, because I'm using this for a strategy perspective. And it's inefficient to go through each of these individual boards. There's 1,755 of them. So instead of looking at the individual boards, I'm going to try to group them into boards in which I can develop heuristics, right? I can identify them at the table, and I can build out strategies for those particular boards.